Uh, okay, got it. Let me click here. And it's my pleasure to introduce Linda Fellag, though of course she doesn't need much of an introduction. We all know Linda. I know her as a colleague and a friend. Linda, of course, teaches at Philadelphia Community College. She's been an active scholar, writing a number of textbooks. She has been active in PTE, holding just about every leadership position at one time or another. And today she's talking about extensive reading, which is something I personally am interested in. So I'm really glad to be the moderator now. And I'm sure she will be effective, edifying, and engaging as always. So having said that, let's let Linda take over.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Roger's also my neighbor, so I have to confess that.
Yeah, now I'm going to sit down. When I sit down, I've got a lawn chair I sit in. It looks like I'm not here except for the top of my head, but I'm just going to sit back and relax and listen.
Okay, thanks, Roger. I'm glad that Roger and Mac are here because they're both experts in reading and vocabulary. I don't know the rest of you well enough professionally to say that, but maybe you are too, and we'll find that out tonight. I changed the name of this. It should be called Why and How, because you may wonder, why should I even do this? And if I decide to do it, how can I do it? So that's the goal of this presentation, to answer the why and the how. So on the first screen, you see the cover of a book that intrigued me more than 20 years ago. And this was the first edition of this book about extensive reading. I saw these two gentlemen, Richard Day and Julian Bamford, at one of the TESOL conventions. And from then on, I thought, well, this has got to work. I've got to do this. But I had a lot of bumps in the road. So I want to also explain how it worked and how it didn't work, so that maybe you can think of how you might implement extensive reading in your own classrooms. First, I have to explain to you why you should, right? So let's get started. So this is kind of the agenda, to go through the why and the how, and give you one sample of how to use extensive reading in a classroom. I'm in a college classroom, but one of my daughters teaches 4th grade in Philadelphia, so she uses extensive reading in her classroom too. And then finally, how might you use it? So first of all, tell me what you know about extensive reading. What are some characteristics of this kind of reading? So what do you know about it? Or do you just tell me if you don't know much about it? That's okay.
Well, I mean, reading a lot with easy materials that often self-selected materials. There's not usually not a lot of assignments connected with it, rather more record keeping. Graded readers are often used where there's a certain amount of words. And Linda, did you want to go full screen with this? Right now, we're just seeing the first slide.
Oh, really? You're not seeing the whole thing?
No, well, no, you're on the first slide still rather than the agenda, and you're not presenting. It's just in the edit mode.
Okay, hold on just a second. Thanks, Roger. Yeah. Okay, so I'm now, can you see it?
Well, we see the first slide, extensive reading, why and how, but we don't see this. The second slide you can see off to the left in the panel.
Okay, hold on.
Linda, if you hit from beginning in the upper left-hand corner,
Yeah, Terry, I did that. I
Lord.
don't know why it's not working.
It happens to me a lot too. So we
Okay,
have to go.
let me
Oh,
start this
it looked
over.
like it worked.
Oh, it did work.
The last second, I think.
Okay. All right, now we're back to square one. Okay.
Okay,
Now
what
can
you
you
can
see?
do. Hi, Linda.
Hi,
What-
Helen.
Hi, what you can do is at the bottom of the screen where there is this scale, where you can, so on the left, or where it says 69%, on the left, there is a little icon. If you click on that, it will give presentation mode.
Okay.
You know, at the bottom of the screen to the right, there
Okay.
is like a scale. And then on that scale, so to get to the presentation mode.
Okay.
Where it says 69%, next to the 69%, there is something that looks like a monitor. You can click on that monitor and it should give a presentation mode.
Okay, so do you see now?
Yes, but it says, yeah, you got to go up and select number 2. Yes, here. Click on this one. Yes, you're right. You're fine.
Okay, so you're not seeing the entire slideshow.
No,
No.
we're still in the edit view.
Okay. Well, bummer.
Well,
Can
it
you
does
see-
work that way, Linda.
Can you
it's
see
not
it
bad.
now?
Yeah, Linda, we can see it. I think it's okay. Like,
So you don't see it in like the presentation mode?
No.
no.
Okay. Okay, well, whatever. Can you see it now?
Yeah, but it has gone to the next one. You got to go back.
Well, I want to be on this one.
Okay, sure.
What is extensive reading? Okay, so I think Roger answered that question pretty well.
Yeah.
And
Pretty
it's-
well, pretty well.
No, you did. You got it. You got an A minus. Okay, there's
I
a
did
couple
well.
of things missing.
Yeah, I just want to add one word. If I may add Roger's excellent description, I just want to add one thing. One thing which is a hallmark of so many things that Roger has said, that extensive reading involves no instruction. So the element of instruction is missing. It's absolutely not instructed. As
Well,
opposed,
I might differ with you, Mac, but
okay.
we'll
Yeah.
carry on.
So in its original form, let me put it this, in its real original idea was that learners select or read, share if they want to. So it's like it's totally learner driven,
Yeah.
reading for
you're right about
pleasure
that.
kind of thing.
Yeah. Well,
But-
I don't know how much any of you have ever tried extensive reading, but let me just carry on, and you feel free to chime in, anybody, whenever you feel like it. So, you know, extensive reading has been called an alternative approach. It's never been the main way to teach reading. What we do in the classroom is intensive reading. So we all know what that is. Let me just share with you what I think are some of the differences. What we do in the classroom, we read a text in detail. This assignment may be done in the classroom. Texts are definitely chosen by the instructor. And like Roger said, there's usually assignments connected with intensive reading, whereas they're not in extensive reading. So, and it may be challenging reading, the kind we do in the classroom, in contrast to easy reading, which is one of the principles of extensive reading. So they are very different.
But if I could say one thing, you said chime in regard to the instruction that Mac brought up. This is a very nice list for extensive reading of how it's supposed to work, but lots of students don't like to read. And we really need instruction to get them engaged with extensive reading. So I would argue that there is instruction. It's a different type of instruction,
Yeah,
and it's, but we do need instruction. And I would also say that it typically has to be done out of class. You get a lot, but doing some in class can be good. For instance, if someone has a book and I know they're not a great reader, I may start reading the book with them. You know, we
Mhm.
take turns. I actually sit beside them, and I'll read a page, they read a page or a paragraph, just to get them involved in the story, because they have such a difficult time beginning reading themselves.
yeah, well, actually, the I don't want to say originators of the idea, because Day and Bramford, who wrote that book that I showed you the cover of, came out first in 1998. They were not the originators of this. This has been around since the 1920s, as far as I can find out. One of their principles is teacher modeling. So that's why I was slightly disagreeing with you, Mac, because while there may not be instruction, you know, they do urge that teachers model this, okay? And reading aloud, like Roger mentioned, you know, reading in class is one of the sort of acceptable practices. But, you know, I don't really think there are a lot of rules about this. I think the main thing is that the reading is easy. The readability level is something you have to think about. And the topic is something that the learners really want to know more about. So I think those two things trump everything else. And because the whole idea is that you're motivating students to want to read. Like Roger said, nobody wants to read. So, I mean, young people these days, there are some, but not a lot. Okay.
Linda, Barbara raised her hand.
Barbara, go ahead.
I don't know much about extensive reading, but from what you're saying, if I said that one of the goals, at least, of extensive reading is to teach reading fluency, would that be correct? Because we often talk about language fluency, but reading, it sounds like if you read for fun and you read often, you become a better reader, and so you become more fluent with the whole idea of reading. So am I in the right ballpark?
Yeah, I mean, Barbara, that's one of the benefits. Here's a list from compiled from different presentations, including those of Day and Bamford, that yes, you will become a better reader because you learn more vocabulary just through the process. You learn more about how English works. Remember that old book by Anne Rames? I mean, grammatical structures are something that you're gonna see and internalize through a lot of reading. And all these other things, like eventually writing improves. The attitude thing is a big factor, and learner autonomy, like Max said, it's learner driven. So
Linda, if I can chime in real quick. Yeah.
Mhm.
So Barbara, totally agree that reading, students develop their reading fluency, but as we say reading fluency, we actually means pace of reading and with accuracy. So I see reading fluency, as Linda was pointing out, yes, it's one of the benefits, but it's not the prime goal of extensive reading, because reading fluency means how many words you read in a minute and with what level of comprehension.
right.
That's not the prime thing, as Linda is saying. That's I totally agree with you, Linda. Yes.
But however, Barbara, reading fast without a dictionary is supposed to be one of the tenets of extensive
Mhm.
reading. Students are encouraged just to read, and if you don't know a word, just skip over it and, you know, try to get the gist, you know. So in
Okay.
so doing, I think they will build reading fluency because they'll read faster.
Yeah,
And-
perhaps I was misusing the word fluency. I went with the idea that as you become more comfortable in a language, it's easier to speak. And
Yeah.
it seems as if you become more comfortable with reading, it becomes easier to read.
Yes, yes, agree. I agree.
Yeah. And I think Paul Nation does include extensive reading under fluency. You know, he likes the 4 strands, one of which is fluency. And I think he does include extensive reading. I don't think he defined it really. At Mac in L1, it is how many words correctly read with intonation and stuff like that. I think Paul Nation is more of a general language fluency.
Okay, so you know, to try to wrap up this question of whether we're teaching or modeling or whatever. Like Roger said, my students don't want to read. So one of the things I do before introducing some kind of project of extensive reading is to try to convince them that it will benefit them. So they read an article that talks about these benefits, and hopefully that motivates them to at least try to start to know that they can not only gain language skills, but also gain some knowledge that they want, okay, so once you've convinced students, and once I've convinced you that this is worthwhile, then we get to the second question, which is how. And by the way, if you're not convinced of the why, you can go to this website, the Extensive Reading Foundation. Paul Nation is one of the sort of founders of this website that has spawned a lot of many websites. Like Thomas Robb has one in Japan, and they're all over the place. There's so much on the web about extensive reading, and they do talk in depth about the benefits. Okay, so once you're convinced that you want to do it, the question is how. Okay, how can it work? What can make it fail? Okay, well, back in the day, how it worked was graded readers. And as we all know, there's all kinds of controversy about whether simplified graded readers are valid and, useful for language learners. There have been lots of studies of this, and subsequently people have decided, well, if you analyze the syntax and the vocabulary of graded readers, they're okay. They're not, they may not be authentic, but they are authentic because they were written by somebody who was an expert, speaker of the language. So, back in the day, it was graded readers. So if we roll back 20 some odd years, when I first got interested in this, the first thing I did was, okay, I got to get my library to get a grant, and I need to buy a bunch of these graded readers that are so beautiful with pictures, that Longman and Cambridge publishes these beautiful little books. And I'm going to have this shelf in the library. And in fact, I did get a grant at Community, and we had a shelf, and guess what? Not many students used it, and they, it just didn't quite, it fizzled. And so then I had this milk crate on a hand cart that I would carry from classroom to classroom with all these graded readers, some of which I had bought at thrift stores, just so I would have a sort of portable library. I don't know, it just didn't quite work. Okay, so I'm just throwing ideas out there of how, how I've tried, and then I'm going to show you in a minute what I've done more recently. So what can make it fail? This was my experience, was that these graded readers are expensive. I mean, once I had a real low level reading class, and I assigned Dracula because the students at community college were putting on a production of Dracula, the theater students. And it was really wonderful. That was not exactly extensive reading, but it's just an example of how graded readers were used, and the topics might not interest the students. So that sort of defeats one of the purposes of extensive reading. And then when we moved more online, the same problem arose. Is, for example, if you go to the British Council or the New York Times, these, well-respected and well-used English language learning sites, you find a lot of readings. But are they on topics that interest students? What are the level of these readings? So the level, the readability level and the topics continue to be an issue that can make this kind of assignment or project fail. So, like I said, back in the past, those books on the left are the ones that we all might have used, that we, very limited topics. I mean, I don't care about soccer. My students didn't care about horses, or, you know what I mean? And now, again, these free online texts, so many of them are out there. The question is, are you going to find, it's like a needle in a haystack for a student to go to all these different websites. So I tried this, giving students this extensive reading assignment, and their job was to go and read a certain number of articles. And I gave them several websites, and they came back frustrated because they were supposed to find topics that interest them, and they didn't find interesting stuff. So I think, we continue to be frustrated by these problems. Right now you can find all kinds of places where you can find free books to read, where you can find graded readers. There's just so many. I think Mac is going to ask me to post this presentation on our website. You can freeze the screen and then go to these sites if you're interested in finding what's out there in terms of, books or readers. But I still think we struggle with finding topics that students want to read about. So I want to tell you, here's some more examples. I mentioned the British Council and BBC have a collaborative site. These are places where you can get a lot of articles. So I tried this project in an advanced reading class in which students also were tasked with learning information literacy and how to use college databases. So what I did was I made this project for them, that they had to go, first we learned about extensive reading, and then their task was to find 5 reading texts of their choice on one topic of their choice, okay? And you'll see that I'm going to explain the steps that they, like Roger said, there's not going to be a test, but there's going to be something that they have to produce. So in this case, it was a 1-sentence summary of the article, followed by a 1-sentence response, a vocabulary list of unfamiliar words or word clusters that they encountered, and then a report that compiles all these things about the 5 texts they read, and then they made an oral presentation. So this was my idea, was to try to kill more than one bird with one stone, because the first step was picking a topic, okay, which was not hard. They had a discussion with their classmates. Do you think this sounds like a good topic? Then the second step was to have library instruction, where they had, a librarian came into our classroom. This was pre-COVID, and taught them how to evaluate sources, how to use the college's databases. And here on this page, though you can't click on, these are not clickable links, you can see that they did some work on determining whether sites were legitimate or not, whether the news was unbiased, etc. So I was able to, combine these two things, extensive reading and the need for them to learn information literacy in an advanced pre-academic reading course. I'm going to stop right here. Do you have any questions or comments so far?
Well, I wrote something in the chat box. The
Okay.
expression came to my mind and I shared, I think this is, would it be okay to call it guided extensive reading?
Yeah, I think so, because, like I said, when you try to go on the web and find articles, let's just say that we didn't do the databases. That's where I encountered the students' complaints, that it was so hard to find articles that were on the topic they were looking for. But the databases simplified the search so much that students were not frustrated. Now, granted, we didn't have the ability to test the readability of all the texts they were reading. Okay. I did try to instruct them. So this is instruction, Mac, in choosing an article that's short, and that if you read a couple of sentences, how many words in those couple of sentences do you not know? And let's count those and see if it's an easy text, because that was my goal. Okay. So I don't know whether they followed that exactly, but that's what I tried to guide them towards. So yes, I guess you could say it was guided. And then also in doing the searches in the database, I led them towards not, juried scholarly articles, but rather something in periodicals.
Linda,
So,
Helen has a question. Do you want me to read out now or?
Sure, go ahead, Helen.
Okay, does ER work better with non-informational or informational text?
Well, yeah, I know that the stuff I've read says that fiction is easier to read than nonfiction. So, they are, I think it depends on the assignment you give. In my case, I used informational text. Okay. But I would think it would work either way, it would depend on what kind of assignment. I mentioned my daughter, who teaches 4th grade in the school district of Philadelphia. She, with her own money, I must say, and some of mine, she organized a bookcase full of, chapter books. I think that they call them, right? Like,
novels, short stories.
Like Sweet Valley Kids, and you know what I'm talking about, those very thin books. Okay, because her students, she teaches in North Philly. Her students are reading way below grade level, so she's trying extensive reading to see if it will help them. So rather than choosing a topic of their choice, she's giving them this library and letting them choose the books, hopefully, not to gain exactly information, but rather just to read for the heck of it, for pleasure. So I don't know if I've answered your question or not, but
Yeah.
I think it would work with either type.
Yeah, I think you did, because I was more inclined to think that it works better with fiction and short stories, because it's just, keep, like, if I were doing extensive reading, I would just keep on reading just to get the main idea, and not necessarily understand every single word, just understand the gist of the reading. And then I think I think it works better with fiction because you just want to keep on reading to know what
Yeah.
happens in the story. And then this
Yeah.
way you'll be able to read more and more.
Yeah, I think you're right, Helen. But in my case, like I said, I was trying to incorporate one of the course learning outcomes for this course I was teaching, which is information literacy. So it was nonfiction text they were reading.
Yes.
So in your case, you know, you could go a whole different direction and you might have phenomenal, better success than I did. So anyway,
If I could,
yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say another source of, if you're just looking, I understand you had a goal of information literacy, but you know, Wikipedia has the English, easy English version. And that they really are quite a bit easier on a topic. But my question, how often did you do this assignment?
Yeah, well, Roger, that's a very good question because I had not done this, you know, in 20 years. So when I first started, I had a real modest goal, read 5 articles. And you do this over, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks. And
Okay.
if I would do it again, I would definitely expand it to the entire semester.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, I'm not sure, but I think ideally you would have 80,000 words read during a semester, which
Yeah.
sounds like a lot, but it's only about 6,000 words a week. And if you read 100 words a minute, which is not a real fast pace and it's easy material, in an hour, you got 6,000 words.
Right.
So it's 80,000 sounds like a lot of words, but when you break it down on a weekly basis, it's really not that many.
Yeah, well, some of the studies, like I mentioned before, have shown that reading speed improves. So, you know, why not? If you did it over the entire school year or semester, you'd certainly see more results than
Right.
what my small taste of it did, you know?
Right. So like repeating this assignment, and it would take
Yeah.
less instruction on your part to repeat it because they would know what to do.
Yeah, yeah. So one thing that I thought was very successful and I would really encourage is one part of the assignment was that every week there was a discussion board. So these screenshots that I'm showing you come from my Canvas course. And I know you can't read this, but the first post is from a Moroccan student. She used to be obese and had lost a lot of weight. So she was really interested in keeping her weight off. I mean, it was a real pressing concern for her. So that's the topic she chose. And so she's telling her classmates about an article she read about obesity, television viewing, fast food consumption, and children's obesity, because she has children too. And then they're responding, I like your choice of the research. You're right about the children. Eating fast food and watching TV, is bad. So I think this part of the assignment, I would encourage you to incorporate in whatever form of a project or semester long assignment you can dream up. Have some ongoing way to have students interact about what they're reading. Okay, so what's happening here is that, remember, the assignment was that you had to write a 1 to 2 sentence summary of the article plus a 1 to 2 sentence response statement. So right there in the post on the top of the page, the student has done that. And so then she's just going to take these things and copy and paste them into her final report. So it was an efficient thing for her, efficient way to go, So even if you were teaching children in a classroom, you could use this thing like a oral discussion where they come and say, here's the article I read, or here's the book I read, this is what's happening. And, you know, it sort of is, for me, it built interest in the whole project. Here's another one.
Oh, nice.
So this student wanted to read about food from the DR, and you know, where Dominican food comes from and so on. And one of, like I said, one of Dan Bamford's principles is you model. So I did it too. So I wanted to research long life and exercise. Mac, you can appreciate this. Mac just finished a marathon. Hooray, hooray, congratulations.
Thank you.
And from his wife, I gather you're going to try a 50-mile is the next one. Gee whiz. Well, anyway, I was wanting to know, you know, what kind of exercise should I do, you know, nearing 70. And so this article was wonderful because it told me that women should only exercise 30 to 60 minutes a day. But, you know, men should exercise longer periods. So I loved this article. So I did the same thing that the students were doing. And so then they commented on my article. So I was doing this every week with them and modeling it. And I don't know how, you know, I don't have any quantitative data about this, but I can say that motivationally, I think it helped.
Linda?
Yeah.
I have a comment from Daniel and a question from Leslie Greenlee.
Okay.
So Daniel is saying Voice of America, VOA Learning English had a variety of themes. That's a comment from Daniel. And Leslie is saying, how can you decipher the level of readings for the different levels of ESL classes that are offered at CCP?
Yeah, well, to Daniel's point, yes, there is so much out there in terms of free sort of graded readings. Some of the websites like the British Council and others, they grade the text using the common European framework. So that sort of gets to Leslie's question, but in my case, I couldn't judge the level of the reading. I did try to control it somewhat, like I said, by asking the students not to look at scholarly articles, but rather to look at periodicals like Better Home and Gardens or something like that, you know. So the reading level should be lower in those popular magazines. And then I did try to explain to students to try to start to read an article, read a little bit, and if they see a lot of big words that they don't know, go find another article, because I want this to be really easy. But I didn't have real control over it, Leslie. So, you know, Leslie is also one of my colleagues at Community. And, you know, our students are all over the place in level. You know, in one class, you can have, you know, a very strong reader and a weak reader. So this was more individualized. I'm not sure getting a sort of a general level for that class would be completely accurate, if you follow what I mean. Does that answer your question, Leslie?
If I could offer something.
Yeah.
Yes, that gives me a good idea. I had no idea before you told me.
Yeah, well, yeah, go ahead, Roger. And then
No, for what you're saying makes sense because there's so many different things they choose. But if you want to ascertain and make recommendations, Ant Word Profiler, it's a free download.
Oh yeah, I use that all the time. I mean, I was
Yeah.
that's just what I was gonna say, Roger. I mean, there's sites out there where you can find the readability level of text, certainly. But the thing is that you want them, and Daniel, this is to your point too. If they go to the Voice of America site, you want them to pick the topic that interests them. I'm not sure VOA is going to have all the topics that interest them. And that's the problem that I encountered. Like I told you, I mean, I sent all my students out like on this Easter egg hunt, you know, to find articles on a topic that interests them. And they found it difficult, and they found it easier to use the database. But Roger, I like your idea about the Wikipedia, because there you could search for a topic.
Well,
So-
but you couldn't possibly, or me, you know, think of all the articles student could find. I wonder how difficult it would be to for students to if you made a like a class database of certain topics, articles, and then put in the results from Word Profiler, and you, over a period of years or semesters, you could build recommended readings.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's good, but then again, it's like the student who goes to the British Council or the New York Times Easy English or the VOA site and sees all the choices of topics, and then I'm afraid they're just going to kind of settle. You know, I mean, the topic they want to know about is, I don't know, anteaters, you know, but there's nothing about anteaters. So they're going to
Yeah.
say, oh, okay, I'll just read about, you know,
Okay.
the stock market or something. I don't want them to choose. I really don't, because, you know, for me, it was more the, you know, the attitudinal benefits that they were going to gain from
Yeah.
reading,
Yeah.
you know, that I really wanted for reading to become a habit.
Okay.
So I was concerned about the choice of topics.
Okay.
Anyway, these are all problems, you know, that you can probably think about. And if you have a better solution, please let me know. There are lots of better solutions, I think. Anyway, for this particular assignment, along the way, they're doing these discussions, they're reading articles, they're posting, and in the end, they do a written report. And so for each article, it's very short. And so this is what I'm modeling for them, okay? You know, that I'm showing them the summary, response, and the vocabulary. Actually, I didn't find vocabulary I didn't know, but I just put some in there, you know, so they would know what their report should look like. And then here's some examples of the reports that two of my students did. One was the girl who was researching obesity, and the other one wanted to know about how to find friends. So this is what the report looks like. So every article would be just a few sentences. So I didn't think it was a really overwhelming assignment. So this is what I asked them to do after they had done the written thing, was then to do an oral report. You know, just a real informal presentation. Say, hi, my name is Linda, and I chose the topic of, you know, long life and exercise. And I chose this topic because I want to live to be 100, and I want to know how much I should exercise. And then I, you know, try to follow this sort of brief outline. So the informal report was not the total stuff they got from all their reading, but just sort of a snapshot of why they chose the topic, what they learned, one new word they learned, and that was it. So it was very short, but the students enjoyed this, and they you know, there was a discourse going on, you know, amongst the whole class. And then at the end, I know you can't read this, but I asked for their reflections on this project, and they were all pretty positive. They felt they learned information, and I never liked reading a book or an article, but when I started reading about the topic that I chose, I started liking to read because it was more, it was made more interesting by the professor. I don't know how I did that, but anyway, that was the goal that I had mostly, was to try to, you know, instill the habit of reading in them. And there were 20 students in my class. I hope you're still seeing my slides, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I think they all, you know, they all gained from this project. This is not quantitative data again, but they learned how to search in the databases. They became stronger readers, and they liked talking about what they learned. So again, my conclusion is that I would expand this project and you know, try to do it all semester long rather than just the short time I did do it, because it was successful. Okay. And next, there's a lot of information out there about how to, you know, implement extensive reading, but these are some of the sites that I would recommend. If you were going to implement it yourself, I would say you think about these 10 principles that Day and Bamford offer. And all of them we've talked about already. And also, you have to deal with, you know, readability. So if you can figure out how to do that in a way that still allows them to choose their own topic, that's wonderful. But I did try to, you know, explain these things to students so that they could choose their own readings. So I think that's been my experience. I'd like to encourage every one of you to try this in some manner in your classroom. So thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you. And it was effective, edifying, and engaging.
Yes.
And we all expected, seriously and practical, and obviously coming from the voice of experience.
I'm going to retire this coming year, so I'm glad I did this. Thank you, Mac, for this idea.
This is wonderful presentation.
Anyway, I hope you guys will try this. And
Linda,
yeah.
you have really made me confused today. I'm so confused now.
Oh, okay.
Now,
I'm sorry.
No. Reason being, I'm trained into the classical model of extensive reading.
Okay.
And in that model, you don't give any assignment on extensive reading. I love this project a lot. It has got the real learner's autonomy. Learners select the things that they want to read. And it's not like the teachers bringing, you know, childish stuff in a classroom. So I love lots of things in this one, like learners develop their reading habit, they read a lot, all those things, and they know how to conduct searches in the library, everything. But then I'm going back to my initial, you know, learning about extensive reading was, hey, do not give any assignment. Let learners read and enjoy. And the meaning of the enjoyment I got was that learners just read whatever they want to read, and that's it. And here, this presentation of yours is actually, now I'm thinking, what is intensive reading and what is it extensive? Because in this one, you are doing summary writing, they're responding, they're doing forum post, they're doing vocabulary, they're doing grammar, they get an assignment, oral response also. So where is the line between intensive and extensive now?
I think that's it's a basis for confusion. All I can say is, in my defense, is that there are a lot of different versions of extensive reading out there. And a lot of people say, like Roger said earlier, don't have tests, don't give tests, but maybe use summaries. So I've seen that several people do have students write summaries. But also, in my defense, I never read the articles that they read. So how do I know whether it was an accurate summary or not? But yeah, you make a good point. You could do it in the traditional way, but I still would encourage some kind of discussion component where the students can share what they've
Yeah.
learned.
Yeah.
And in so doing, they might even say, "Oh, I learned this new word." That's in my mind, that's okay. So if you want to do it the pure way, then
No.
how about that?
Linda,
One
yeah, real quick. I love this project because the reading, students get an opportunity to interact with each other. So, it's great, but some of these things, I was thinking that it's more like coming in the domain of intensive reading where you teach reading, like focus on vocabulary. But Roger was saying instruction is there. There is some different kind of instruction. So
I don't know. I didn't feel like I was instructing them. And about the information literacy, you could completely eliminate that. I just did it because it was one of the course learning outcomes for that course. And so I thought this is a way for me to, kill two birds with one stone.
I think the difference in extensive reading the way Linda does it and intensive reading is Linda didn't focus on any particular vocabulary. She didn't focus on the meaning of any particular paragraph. The requirements were one, to satisfy course competencies, but they were also to ensure that students actually did the reading, that there was some accountability. And I really think that's necessary with the students we have today.
great point.
They don't
Great
like-
point.
And in regard to reading nonfiction, I've had students simply keep a log. How many pages did you read? And a response. And response is like, I was surprised when such and such happened, or I didn't like the ending here, or I was so angry when this character did that, or this story reminds me of another story. So it was very, general and trying to get an individual response to literature, which is a part of reading, but it was some way of having accountability, because if you don't, students won't do it, in my experience.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Linda,
but
I
I'm-
agree.
okay.
And so
Linda-
Linda had a way of holding students accountable, meeting the course goals, but not focusing on particular items like we do in intensive reading. Linda, would you agree with that?
yeah. I'm sorry, I was going to say something, but Terry, please, you talk.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you so much. And I'll tell you why. Barb knows this. I teach ESL for Marjorie, level 1 to 6. Then they go to Barbara Horace. Then I teach reading for Barbara Maurer. So I often get them, like when they're here and then when they get better. And then at this point. So when they're at this point, we have that information literacy project.
Okay.
And our librarians are amazing. They set up the databases for us. So if your librarian can help you,
Oh yeah, they're great.
phenomenal. But I never thought to use it in my 1 through 6. And I have a really high level 4 right now. And I think I'm going to have them next semester. And I can do it your way for them, which I'm so excited about. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, Terry. But you know what? I think you could do this a multitude of ways. Like Roger said, if you created this database where you got the readability, flesh concave or whatever for a bunch of readings, then you could do it at the very low levels. And then you could go to the VOA site and analyze all those texts. And then you would sort of have more of a handle on it. I do think there's 100,000 ways to do this, but just try one of them, see how it goes.
And Paul Nation has a number of free graded readers on his website.
Yes, he
So,
does. Yeah.
If you wanted to have a small class set, that would be one way to get started.
But again, like Max says, that becomes more like intensive reading. If you're giving every student, the teacher is giving every student something to read. You know?
True, but are they reading? If they're, the idea is they do a lot of reading, and
Yeah.
there's a pure, in my mind, there's a pure form, and then there's practical constraints. What materials do I have, and what do I
Yeah,
have to do to get students to read?
yeah. Well,
Roger,
anyway,
you
there's a
made a
lot of
very
challenges.
Yeah, Roger, you made a very fine point when you said that in this model, actually, we do not focus on particular items, but we just ask them about their reactions, but we do not kind of give them a prompt to write something on. I really like it. Yeah.
Well, that seemed to me to be the difference between intensive and extensive reading.
Anybody else have a thought? Well, thank you very much. If you have a thought, please.
What a
Chime in.
wonderful, wonderful end of the series of this year. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mac.
Remarkable. Wonderful.
And you should make your pitch that Mac has devised a new topic for TESOL stories for 2022. So you can find out more about that.
We'll be
through,
sending out, yes.
yeah, email blasts and the website, etc. Thank you all. Have a great holiday break.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Everybody have a good holiday.
Bye, everybody.
Okay.
Holidays, Merry Christmas.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.